Welcome to Rodney Veal's Inspired By, a production of Public Media Connect, the regional partnership of CET in Cincinnati and Think TV in Dayton. Rodney Veal, our host for this podcast, is an independent choreographer, interdisciplinary artist, and all-around fan of all things arts and creativity. And he's excited to share another great conversation with you. Thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed the show, please subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
All right, we're super excited to have as our guest Michael London, who is a playwright and director of the Ohio Playwrights Circle. He has studied playwriting and theater in a variety of locations, and in theaters and in academic settings across the country and the world, Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts in London, in England, and Ohio State University, just to name a few. And he has a Master's of Arts in Screenwriting for Television and Film from the Royal Holloway, University of London. Woohoo! I'm an Anglophile, so this is just an Anglophile, so this is super exciting for me. And he is also working with various organizations across the country, and to the Dramatists Guild and the National Playwrights Guild. I hope I'm getting the title right, and he'll correct me when he comes in. And he's also a recent announcement of receiving the Ohio Governor's Awards for the Arts for 2023. So it's super cool. So it's not one of these things where he's coming in as a novice. He has a lot of gravitas backing it up in playwriting. And I just am super excited to have a conversation with Michael London. So Michael, that was your life. Welcome to the podcast.
It's good to be with you, Rodney.
Oh, that's super cool. And you know, one of the things that as I was going through and pulling up information about you, one of the things I was, and this is with other guests, how did you start out with the belief system that I want to be a playwright? I mean, that's not something that you walk around as in the fifth grade saying, you know, my career, I want to be a playwright. So, so tell us the origin story of Michael London. Go for it.
I don't know if it's. Well, let me try to answer this question. The question about playwriting, because I think there was a part of me that was even surprised. I was in, as you may be aware, you may not be, but I have a dance background.
I was not aware of that.
Yeah. And I was dancing, and I was on I can't remember the name. I want to say it's a Moody Fellowship or Scholarship at Lamar University in Texas. And I had danced before that in Columbus, and I was there at the university, and I'd had a couple of different injuries. And when we danced all day. We got up in the morning, at 6 or 7. I was in the studio by 8, dance. And because I was also dancing with a couple of different companies that were there, in addition to the university classes and work. And then we would even sometimes do teaching. So it was constant. I had a couple of injuries. They weren't horrible. But if you've been a dancer and you know what I'm talking about, I had a couple of friends who were in our RDT at the time. Now, granted, I'm going back. I'm in the 70s, okay, that we're talking about this, and they were a couple, husband and wife, and it was interesting to me how many surgeries they ended up having in order to keep dancing. And I just remember I was in the what do you call it? It's the sports. It was really sort of odd because it's a Texas, very big sports place.
Oh, yeah, totally. Physical therapy. You're probably in that sort of.
I was in that, that sports rehab area, right?
Yeah, sports medicines for
and so there were, there were 3 football players, 2 weightlifters, 5 basketball players, 6 gymnasts, and whatever, and 1 dancer. But I just talked to people about stuff, and I was in there, and I was just looking at this rehab. And I think it got in my head because I was limited on what I could do. I had to stick my leg down, from my knee in this tub. I don't know, that therapy thing. And then there were other things. So somehow it got in my head, and I began to question whether or not, especially because of these friends of mine who I knew who were dancing for their life and had these injuries. And I went, do I, do I really want those, surgeries? Do I really want to go through that? I mean, I love dance, but do I love it that much? And
All question that. I trust me.
yeah, I
I
mean,
have empathy. I get it.
yeah, the dancers. I mean, it's not an easy life, early career and fast and hard and constant. Anyhow, I had that was not the first injury, and that's what got me to thinking. And while I was at the university, I had been invited to continue on a scholarship, and they wanted me to keep dancing. And at the end of the year, I decided I wasn't going to. And because part of what I was thinking was, what else do I like to do? And I was fascinated with the storytelling capabilities of dance. I was fascinated with other things. And my background before that was in the theater. And I went, I think I should be and I was in Texas, and in my mind, I went, I should be telling stories. I need to start writing. And I thought, I know this sounds weird, but it was, I, I thought, I don't think I can get injured writing. I mean, I'd had a couple of different injuries, and I thought, if I write, I'm not going to hurt my ankle. I'm not going to have my knee stuck in this thing. They won't be bandaging my elbow because this dancer twice the size of me ran into me or whatever, or some weird thing that
happens on the stage. Exactly.
I just thought it was safer. I know that's a weird way to come into writing, but I thought it was safer.
Oh no, I think I absolutely understand. I mean, I knew I had to get in and get out. I mean, I knew that my performance shelf life was very limited. I mean, I had injuries. I stupidly danced on them. I get it. I totally get that construct.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
when you get this opportunity to do you just jump on it. So
and I sort of moved that direction. And when I moved back to Ohio, and I became the production director for Ballet Metropolitan and helped to start that company, actually.
Oh my goodness! At the time, yeah.
Yes,
So
Columbus, back in the 70s, and I remember I was taking and it was that led me actually to come to Dayton, because I was taking the company in Columbus, Ballet Metropolitan, to Philadelphia. I remember it was in 76, and we were to the Northeast Regional Ballet Association, the NERBA conference, and that is where I first saw DC, and I was sitting in the bleachers because we would have rehearsals in like a gymnasium.
Of course, back in the day.
Yeah. And because you can only get so many companies, one company at a time on the stage. So we would use that. And I remember sitting there talking to Joan Myers Brown, who was with Philadenko.
Philadenko, yeah.
And so I'd been introduced to her, and we were having a great conversation. In the middle of the conversation, I looked down on the floor. All of a sudden, there was a new company that came in, and they started dancing. To be honest, I don't know what Joan was talking about because I was so distracted. And I looked, and I was like, this is Dayton Contemporary Dance Company. I said, who are these people? And she said, oh, you don't know them? And I'm like, no, they're brilliant. Who are they? I mean, I'd never seen them, didn't know them. And she said, well, that's Dayton Contemporary Dance Company. I said, my God, they're brilliant. I just went on like a fool. I just never seen, they were wonderful. I was completely enraptured. What I didn't know was, I didn't know that sitting behind me, up a row in the bleachers, was Geraldine Blunden.
Oh my God. Oh.
And
I love her,
Yeah. And so I'm sitting there, and I didn't know I didn't know. There were just people sitting there. And I said, Joan, I was just crass. I said, who in the hell? My God, who did this? Who runs this company? Before I leave, you've got to make sure I meet them. And she is laughing because she knows I'm making a complete fool of myself. Because Geraldine's sitting right behind me, right?
No nonsense, Geraldine Blunden. Yes.
Absolutely. Just sitting there, not saying a word, not reacting, I got no clue. And Joan was wonderful. She just smiling. And I know she's like a cat with the mouse. I didn't know why. And she said, oh, well, well, that should be pretty easy, Michael. And I'm like, really? You need to do that. And she goes, why don't we do that now? And I said, what? And she said, turn around. And I turned around and she introduced me to Geraldine. And Geraldine said very few words, which was
Which
typical.
typical of Geraldine,
Yes,
yes.
she said to me, she said, now you're the production manager, production director for Ballet Metropolitan. Is that correct? I said, yes. I said, it's very good to meet you. And she said, yes, you're going to be my manager. And I said, okay. And I looked at Joan like, is she a little wacky? But I mean, it was just, that was her way. And I said, okay. And I just went on. And a year in 77, we met again. I ended up in Dayton. I thought I was coming just for a short time to take care of some work, some business. And she walked in, sat down and said, okay, because we had stayed in touch a little bit, but not much. And she said, so are you ready? And I said, for what? She said, to become my managing director. You're going to be my first managing director. And I was like, you're really serious about this, aren't you? And she went, I know you're the one. And finally, after a number of times, I said yes. And that was when I became her first managing director.
Oh my God. So how long were you managing director of DCDC?
Not a long time. I had told her I said, I have a 5-year plan. So she asked me this in 77.
Okay.
I worked 78, 9, 80. And I think I want to say it was 81 I left, because I was able to accomplish for the company to create this foundation that I thought would take about 5 years. And it really only took me about 3.5. Right. And I remember telling her, oh, she was not a happy camper, because you're not leaving me. And because we'd become family.
Right.
You know how it is. And so,
exactly.
But I said, yes, but I've completed what I needed to do for you. And we've created this base that we've turned this company a professional. We're moving. Everything's in the right direction. She goes, yes. And that's why you can't, it was one of those. But she, she was, she became like my sister, I have to admit.
Wow.
And we were very close. Yeah. Debbie was always it was Debbie and Dawn and all the rest of them were just like a bunch of nieces, for me. And it was a blessing because we did a lot for each other and I learned a lot. I was incredibly lucky to be welcomed into that amazing creative energy that was not just Geraldine, but also the entire company, which it still that artistic, that incredible vision that I first saw in Philadelphia in 76.
That's still there. That's
Yeah,
still there,
it's
by the
still
way.
there. It's just amazing. And I consider myself just to have been blessed to be able to be a part in any way.
That blows my mind because it's the fact that you have this dance background, because your history is kind of not on Google. It's not in social media, and it's not, because, hey, good job. I'm really impressed by that. So because now that just begs the question of, and I love the fact that you're recognizing the narrative nature of dance. And so,
yes,
especially modern dance. And so in that 5-year plan, was that 5-year plan to with your writing, was it to head into the realm of screenwriting, playwriting, was it just to be a writer itself? I mean, how does that platform lead to the other?
For me, what happened is that I was, in what little free time I had had just started writing, and I wrote a few scripts with no intention of them going out. I called them, in my mind, they were learning scripts. And I have been very lucky. Before I was even in high school, I had been cast in a number of shows in the community. When I lived in Columbus, as a matter of fact, I remember the high school drama director came and saw something and then came backstage and he said, "You go to my school?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Why aren't you in any of our productions?" And I said, "Well, I don't have time, sir." He said, "You better be and show up and play off." It was one of those things. And that was a great learning experience that I'd had. So I was very lucky to have an exposure both in school and in the community to what does it mean what does it mean to tell a story? So you know, Rodney, if you're on stage and you're telling a story, you're learning about storytelling from a very experiential perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I had done. So I had then taken those years of actually learning that and doing that, and then with my dance and then watching dance, and I just said, okay, it's time to start writing. So in my free time I would write. Sometimes I would paint. I had an art studio too, but sometimes I just needed to get it out and write. So I wrote for a number of years, and then when I left Dayton Contemporary Dance Company, I continued to work as an advisor to them and a number of other companies. And I went to work with the Ohio Arts Council and the Minority Arts Program so that I could work with just a wider range of organizations. And through that association and some of my writing that was happening, I joined the Artist in Residence program, the arts and education program that the Ohio Arts Council had. They took a couple of my scripts and said, okay, we want you in. And I began doing playwriting residencies in schools. And
Okay.
they took each residency, the shape of it and the teaching of writing. And I think you're going to understand what I mean. When you have to teach something, you're also forced to learn something. So I was also learning. So I didn't work with elementary school. I usually work with middle school and high school
High school.
students
Okay.
because I did have a tendency to work on a more academic level. And so I wasn't really great for, the elementary schools. As a matter of fact, there was a wonderful playwright in Yellow Springs, and I'd say, oh no, you need to talk to Sharon. When they'd come to me and try to get me to come to their school, I'd literally take them by the hand to go meet Sharon or somebody else that I knew would do a really good job. But it was there that then I also began to write tailored work. So for instance, I was doing a residency at Trotwood Madison High School one year.
Okay. Wow.
And so I told the director at the time, I asked her, because they wanted me to write something. And I said, okay, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to cast a play for me. And she goes, great, what play? And I said, no. Get me a cast. I want you to cast a play, but you don't have a play. I want you to determine who's going to participate in this. And then I will get to know them as actors, and then I will write a play specifically for them to push their strengths, to support their weaknesses, all of those kinds of things. And also to allow whatever message they have that they want. In other words, I want to give voice to those kids, because a lot of times in high schools you have them doing some script of somebody else, or they're playing, an old man, or they're doing a whatever. I wanted theirs. So she did that, came up with an incredibly eclectic group of students. And I said, I need 3 days with them. And I had a video camera and the stage, and we did all kinds of exercises and improv. And it was almost like a therapy session of us sitting around in a circle and them telling me, because my job for 3 days was to listen.
Okay.
Telling me what they cared about, what their frustrations were, what was driving them crazy, what gave them joy, what they missed, what they loved, all of those different things. And so then I finished those 3 days, and then I went away. And in 2 weeks, I wrote a new play for them, a full-length production. I think it was called The Incident at White Rock, and came back and then gave it to them. And then they rehearsed it and put it on as one of their major plays for the year. And that experience of understanding, there's a connection to community, I guess is what I'm trying to say, that I learned by doing residencies. None of them were ever the same. They were always different, but I could tell this was at Trotwood at that time had an incredibly creative and devoted group of students and teachers who were really interested in the art. And so I had to step it up I couldn't just say, let's do an exercise. And that's when I went, I'm going to have to really step it up. I think I'm going to have to write an original piece for them.
Wow.
And that's exactly what they wanted. They wanted that challenge. And so that's what we did. And so through those exercises and through the, writing on demand, it's like, if you've created something, you know what it means. If you've got a deadline, it
Exactly.
changes. Yeah. I mean, and I had a colleague of mine, a very gifted person. He's a very gifted director today, but back then was helping me because this wasn't the day of computers. And so I literally was with a
No.
little dictaphone thing, and I was dictating scenes on tape, and they were in another part of the building typing, and to get this done in 2 weeks.
Wow.
But those experiences helped me really, and having somebody like that you can trust,
Hmm.
because he literally would come up and and knock on the door in the room that I was in and go, excuse me, you screwed this up. You can't say such and such and so and so. You forgot that you killed that person, or you did, or whatever, and you can't kill them because she's pregnant and you forgot, or whatever. And we would just have these weird conversations about characters, but he was usually right. To be honest with you, but I'd been so busy trying to pound out this thing, stuff like that. And
Keep things straight.
those kinds of experiences probably taught me as much about writing. And then I continued to write, I continued to study, and then I began periodically to teach and doing workshops. And I taught, I taught at Otterbein University,
Okay.
playwriting there, just different places.
The kind of the experiences that, I mean, and this is something because this podcast is, it's an eclectic audience. I mean, I do not know. It can't be any more eclectic. I mean, it's like educators, students, it's housewives. It's just crazy that people walk up to me and say, I heard this podcast. I'm like, okay. So I always wanted to make sure it's like, because I love the fact that you're talking about the different experiences leading to this sort of epiphany about playwriting and the actual practice of playwriting. One of the things I pulled up off the internet, and I'm quoting you. I feel like I pulled up my Diane Sawyer moment
Uh-oh.
about your work. And I love how you were writing towards characters in Trotwood, and this whole question of, your themes in your work about secrets are about secrets and families,
Yes.
which is like, I thought, oh, you really did pick up the narratives from modern dance, did you not?
Yeah.
So talk about, I mean, is that a crucial element? Like, there has to be. Does a play not work unless there is something that is being discovered, or can it just be? Well, I mean, I'm just kind of curious. Does it have to have layers? I mean, let's talk about that in your
Yeah,
words.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I think that, first of all, I don't think every play has to be the same and is structured the same. I am fascinated with storytelling structures. It's sort of a thing. Very often, to be honest with you, I come up with a structure for the concept of telling a story, and I have no idea what the story is. But I'm fascinated with stories. So when you talk about layers and, does it have to have this element or that? Those are sometimes things that I think about before I even know what the story is I'm going to write, because I'm just interested in different storytelling structures. And I think that, well, to give you an example, I think secrets and a story revealing something, whether or not it's revealing something to all of the characters or whether it's only revealing something to the central character. Sometimes some of the most fascinating stories are about people that are just like us, that are walking around in life thinking we know what we're doing and really believing certain things, and then all of a sudden having a revelation about ourselves and seeing ourselves and going, oh my God, I'm stupid. How did I miss this? And or, oh my God, I can't believe I kept this hidden all these years. It's those kinds of things. So self-revelation as well as revelation to others, I think, is fascinating, and I think audiences can learn. I do believe that stories are the textbook for life. I think that children, I, I watch, over the years, I watch my grandchildren and I watch them learn, and I watch other children. I watch children in schools, and they learn in a powerful way when that learning is connected to story. As adults, why are we watching Netflix? Why are we watching stories? Why are we watching? Because we're learning about life. We're learning about what's good to do, what's bad to do, what consequences are. We can, without having to go out and, crash the car. We can see what the consequences are by watching somebody else do it or hear the story. That this all started, if we think back in the stories in history, believe me, there were young men who were listening and sitting around the fire, in caves when the guys came back and they were two people short. And they listened to those stories about what happened. And they were learning from those stories about what to do and what not to do. Stories are the textbook for life. Stories that are in every way and for all of us. So I do believe that that's fundamental, and that's part of the work that we as storytellers do, is that we're there to help provide, even if it's just shining a light on someone else's life, someone else's story, because it's somebody else that's going to watch. There's a project I'm working on right now that I was very, very lucky. Last year, I received an individual artist award from the National Endowment for the Arts to create a new play. And the project is called Native Voices. And it's a tricky one. I'm working on it right now. We're doing public story circles, and I'm interviewing an awful lot of people that live here in the Miami Valley in Ohio about what does it mean to be Native? What does it mean to be Native American Indian or Native descendant and live here? Because I think a lot of us that live in this area are invisible. There are Native people here that are members of enrolled tribes of a wide range because it's a very intertribal state for a variety of reasons. I don't believe that a lot of people know that. I don't believe that I don't believe that Native people are always seen. I don't believe that we know that we're seeing. I don't believe we know their stories. And so this is an effort, this particular project, to be able to allow Native voices to be heard and Native people to be seen, is specifically about what their experiences is right here in the Miami Valley. So that's the kind of thing, because it may not be a secret, for instance, to the Native people who live here, but it is to the people who don't see them, who don't hear them, who aren't aware. So, and usually it's families. I think families are fascinating, and there's all kinds of families. There's the families that we are, the families that we're born into, the families that we make of our own, and the families that we experience every day at work. We have all kinds of different families, and some of us function better in some of them than we do in others.
So true. So true.
Excuse me. And I think when you can sit and watch a story about a family and you can see yourself and nobody else, you don't have to talk to anybody about it, and you can see somebody like yourself, and you see yourself in someone else, and you see yourself in someone else's struggles, and you see how they overcome it, I believe it can inform you on what your options are. Something you may not have thought about before, something you may not have dealt with before in that way, but you get to watch someone else do it and go, oh, maybe I can do that. Maybe that would help me. Maybe that would make my life better. Maybe that would help me make my son's life better, my daughter, my family, my whatever. I think that's what stories are about. And that's why I think the dynamics around secrets, whether they're purposeful secrets or, if not secrets, things unknown that get revealed, and families and the essential family structure that we're all connected to in one way or another. Even if we're disconnected from family, we're connected to the concept of the family structure. And I believe it's a great point of learning. And that's why most everything I have that I write is connected in some form, fashion, or to that.
I love it. And so we're going to take a brief pause here, and we're going to come back to this really great conversation and talk about, dive even deeper into this conversation about characters and story and playwriting and structure. So stay tuned.
I'm Bonnie Miles, Membership Coordinator of CET. Thank you for listening to Rodney Veal's Inspired By. This podcast is a production of CET and Think TV, 2 local PBS stations. As PBS stations, the work we do online, on air, and in the community is supported by listeners like you. If you're enjoying the show and would like to support our work, please consider becoming a member at cetconnect.org or thinktv.org. Plus, when you sign up to donate at least $5 a month, you'll get access to special members-only streaming videos on the PBS app through Passport. Learn more at cetconnect.org or thinktv.org. Thanks for listening, and now back to the show.
All right. So, oh my God, Michael, that's so great to hear your story and about this journey with secrets and families and your process. And so I have a question, because one of the things when I was looking up in my, research was the fact that, okay, you're an artist in residence for the Benjamin Franklin House in London. Can we understand? Residencies blow my mind anyway as a concept, but how is the Benjamin Franklin House having a playwright as an artist in residence? What drew you to this?
Well, when I have been going back and forth to England because of school and other associations for a number of years. As a matter of fact, I'll be heading back there in June.
Jealous.
For probably 3 weeks, and I'll fit in a whole bunch of stuff. As a matter of fact, next week, I have a Zoom meeting with Marcia, with the director at the Franklin House. So we meet online. I haven't been, this will be my first trip since the beginning of the pandemic. I usually go once or twice a year. And it came because I had written some work on Benjamin Franklin for the theater. And when I was in London, I had some other colleagues and friends and producers who wanted to put together a reading. And we decided that it would just be really interesting to do. There's only one building left, the Benjamin Franklin House, which is in London on Craven Street. It's the only place standing that Franklin lived, and he lived there for quite some time. He was there probably a good 10 years in his last stretch, and then maybe 3 before that, when he was the representative for the colonies. But this is where he lived. And so we thought, wouldn't it be interesting to present a reading of this new work on Franklin that I had written, and to do it in his parlor.
Wow.
Which is what we did. And then afterwards, and I suppose this is really the compliment I took from it, was that the director, who is a Franklin scholar, asked me if, could they get the rights to use the play more or whatever. And I said, well, I won't do that right now, but if you want to work together on something, what if I wrote something designed specifically to be presented in this space? In other words, site-specific work. And they said yes, and they were really excited, because I think the real compliment was because they're not dramatists. Mm-hmm. They are academics and scholars, right. and brilliant, by the way, at their scholarship. And I said, there's a way to communicate much of this, and they understood that. And the compliment I got was, your work was, from a scholarly point of view, in terms of its accuracy, it was spot on. And so all of those years of research all of those years of my research on Franklin and his relationship with his son, which most people don't even know he had one, paid
I
off.
didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not only did most people don't know that Benjamin Franklin had a son, but his son was probably one of the most important people representing the crown in the colonies. He was the royal governor of New Jersey. He was the longest serving royal governor for the king of any of the colonies. And yet his father was Benjamin Franklin, and William Franklin was, this important man. Well, they ended up father and son on two opposite sides. And so that's what the particular play I wrote called Treason was specifically exploring that relationship and a specific night that actually did happen where both of them snuck away because they couldn't be seen together and got to a friend's place in the country in Pennsylvania and tried to convince each other to come over to the other side. And that's the night their very close relationship exploded. And I mean, people don't know when Franklin did his kite experiment, which everybody knows about. People don't know that it was William, his son, holding the key and the string. They were very, very close. It was a loving relationship, and it ended that night. And so that was the night I wrote about, because that again was about family. It was about the secrets. People don't even know he had a son. Many people. So I wanted to write about that. They appreciated it. And one thing led to another. I wrote another piece for them. I've written a couple of other pieces specifically for them to be able to be performed there in the house that are site-specific works. And that led to my becoming their playwright in residence. And I'll be meeting with, as a matter of fact, the director, I think next week, and we're going to be talking about what we're going to be doing over the next few years, because I think there are some opportunities with other writers, not just me, and for me to be taking a role maybe to curate as their playwright in residence. I'll probably still write some more stuff, but I don't think I'm it. I think there are others that have a voice that need to be heard, and I think both entities could benefit. And so I'm looking at helping them with that process. And so I'll be heading back to England in June for that, and to see a bunch of friends and go to a wedding and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, which is, like I said, I'm totally jealous. I mean, it's really funny that our paths intersect, because a lot of people don't know that I studied at Bulmarsh College in Reading.
Yes.
I never really talk about it. I never really talk about the fact that I studied American politics in the 1960s. Odd bird. I'm just a very odd bird that way.
That's okay. I like that.
I mean, so I will always have the UK will always have a really great place in my heart, because I felt like that's why I kind of discovered some things that I'm still playing with as an art maker. And because I was an art maker and a political scientist, which is the duality of the brain going on there. So that's why I'm loving this conversation, because it's like politics, because a lot of people did know. And I was like, wait a minute, how did I miss that he had a son and that relationship? So I went and looked it up, and I'm like, this is fascinating. So I think a lot of people, for people who maybe are considering being playwrights, I'm hearing it time to time. Do the work, people, which is basically do the research. Research is critical and paramount to telling these stories and uncovering them. So from your perspective, because you are working with the Dramatists Guild, and you talked about you want to help people tell these stories, like to share their voices. Talk about that, like why that's important. Like, and I love the fact that you're generous to invite other artists into your space on a residency with the Franklin House.
Yeah, I hope to be able to do that with the Franklin House, and as well as potentially some other residencies that I'm looking at. But my role with the Dramatists Guild. The Dramatists Guild of America is the professional association for dramatists, composers, lyricists, and librettists in the United States. And we probably have about 10,000 members across the country. Most people connected predominantly with Broadway. And we're not a union, as are some of the others, like Actors Equity, etc. But we are the professional association of dramatists in the United States. And I was asked to be, let's see, this is 23. So a year and a half ago, I became the Ohio representative, the regional representative for Ohio with the Dramatists Guild. And so my job is to do my very best to serve Ohio playwrights and to lift them up and to honor them and to find ways to serve them. And sometimes it's doing a podcast, if you will, an online interview. I had fun this year. I did this past year Radio on the Lake Theater. I did a whole thing on audio drama that's on the Dramatists Guild website with the directors, the artistic director and the producing director there, which was great fun. We had, dramatists from all over Ohio, but around the country, and some from outside the country joined us, which was great fun. So I'll do programs like that. And I work with the National Affairs. We just held 5 community conversations with playwrights across the country. It's important to me to be able to give back. It's important for me. I've always found that if I do something for somebody else, the truth of the matter is I'm doing something for myself, because whatever it is, I'm going to learn from it. And so my reaching out and my sense of serving I've served on lots of boards over the years, lots of organizations, but it really comes from a place of knowing that giving creates community, and creating community gives back to yourself. And so in many ways, I'm giving to myself by serving, because I get great friends, wonderful experiences, get to visit all kinds of marvelous places. I've been lucky. I went to school here in this country, but I also went to school at a number of places in England. I have friends there. I have family there. But I taught in China. I taught in Russia. I taught in Brazil. I didn't expect those experiences to come about. But when you put yourself out there and you do give to your community in one form or another, it somehow gives back. And then all of a sudden you have someone say, would you be willing to do a tour in China and teach for 2 months or something like, you know what I mean? You don't know that's coming, but it does.
Right.
And and by saying yes to it, I wasn't making money, anymore, but what an experience. My giving to them taught me about what it was to live there and what it was to be there. And this was in the late 90s. But when I taught in Russia, it was the Soviet Union. And so it was Leningrad was where I taught.
Right. Which
it wasn't
city is
St. Petersburg again. But what a learning experience. What a blessing for me to be able to, is the way I look at it. So yes, I have done a lot of service with different organizations. The Dramatists Guild is one of them that I'm very committed to. Next month, it's just sort of coincidence. It happened over this last 3 months, I found out. But next month is on May the 4th. I remember it now, because May the 4th be with you.
May the 4th be with you, of course, for our Star Wars fans out there.
Yes, exactly. I have an anniversary on May the 4th that I didn't know about until just literally a month or 2 ago. And it'll be my 40th anniversary, my 40th year being a professional member of the Dramatists Guild of America.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, 40 years? Has it been that long? Gee, I'm feeling old.
No, but isn't that but those kind of milestones? I mean, other people understand. It's like you weren't doing it fly by night. This wasn't a sort of like a hobby. This was speaking to you about something that you care about, and it comes through. I mean, this conversation, I'm like, oh, the world, because you're connected to the world and people. So 40 years.
And Rodney, you know what this means. It's about, what does it mean to make art? And to make art, you do the work. You've got to do the work. You've got to put in the time. Yeah. And you don't put in the time and do the work if you don't care. If you don't get a rich experience back from it, you leave it off and you go on to something else. It's those of us who care. We truthfully don't do it for money. We do it for the joy, because that's the richness it brings in our lives. I know it does for me.
Well, it's really funny because and I think this is our, I want to say eighth or ninth podcast. I mean, I'm not keeping, truly not keeping track of that number, but every person I've talked to from different walks of life, I've talked to a Broadway producer. I've talked to Hannah Beekler, who's a production designer. I've talked to Jess McMillan, who does mosaics. I've talked to Amy Deal, who's a fabulous artist. And everybody has said the same thing. And it's like, it's been consistently throughout. I'm like, you got to do the work. You got to take, the experiences matter. I mean, one of the things I loved about Hannah Beekler was that in order for her to get Fruitvale Station, she had to be a dog. She was because she didn't have any money. She was a dog sitter in Oakland. That's how she could afford to be on the set to be the production designer with Ryan Coogler. So, which led to Black Panther, Creed. It just blew my mind. I'm like, oh, you were a dog sitter, okay? But we've all have those stories, and that's why I'm finding fascinating. I was telling Anne Rodelandi, a producer for the art show, it's like these stories are rich. I mean, storytelling is where it's at. So this advice to others, which is really, really great. Is there something in, other than doing the work, is there one other nugget for someone who's actively considers storytelling and playwriting and get spoken the word? What should they know? I'm like, you've been at it for 4 decades. Something has come out, I'm sure.
Well, I just think that there's a key word, which is listen. 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 When whatever's going on around you, listen. If you see a family, whether it's your own or another, in turmoil, take a step back and listen. Not just for what you can do about that situation, but what you can learn about that situation. And every time you listen, you're giving yourself an opportunity to teach. You're giving yourself an opportunity to tell a story, which becomes a textbook for somebody else's life to help them learn something. Just listen. You have to listen to people, listen to how they talk, listen to why they talk, listen to what they say, watch what they do. Listen to what someone says and compare it to what they do. Do they match? I mean, just for a playwright, if you can train your ears as well as your eyes, but especially your ears, to listen to the layers that go on in a conversation and what people say and what they might be caring about underneath, you're allowing yourself to absorb story.
That is a really great nugget. I totally appreciate that. And I love the fact that you talk about listening, because it's an observation, because we talk about that in movement generation. If you're not observing the world, how are you generating movement? The world is filled with bodies that are in motion, with intentionality. And so it's this very similar trait that all artists share, is the power to listen and the power to observe. And what I have loved about this conversation is that we haven't even talked about the Governor's Awards, which we should for briefly. Congrats on winning a Governor's Award for the Arts, because it's weird. It's weird to win awards. I mean, it's like for the thing you love doing. I mean, I get it. I mean, it's like, what? Why are you giving me an award? I just do this because I know no other thing. I have no other skills. This is it, So how does it feel to be acknowledged that what you've done for 4 decades, but which is more longer than that, matters and is awesome?
Yeah, it does feel good. It's odd in some ways, but I think probably the thing that I really appreciate the most about it is the is the understanding and the recognition of, for me, what I've been doing and how it is connected to building community. And because when you are able to build community, and I define that by helping to connect people
Mhm.
and allowing people to find connection. Because the more we can find what we have in common, and this is where the arts have such enormous power, every time we can find a way to connect, we then rebalance the scales of our divisions.
Mm.
And we know that politically in this country, we're a very, especially on the surface and deep down, very divided point in our existence. But it's not new. We've had division forever. And where we've found that people can come together often are within the arts,
Mm.
that people can come and watch a difficult story in a theater and sit in the same audience. And even though we may come away with different perspectives about that story and what we saw, we have some common experience that connects us. When we find someone else that loves the same music and we sit in a concert and we listen to the music, it doesn't make any difference whether it's a rock concert or the Philharmonic. When you can experience and appreciate that for those moments, it connects you. So any of those things with art and all of the different expressions that we have out there, when it can connect people, it means there's an opportunity. It doesn't mean it will. It means there's an opportunity for divisions to be diminished. And when divisions are diminished and we are more together, we are healthier. That's my belief. And we can have healthier community when in fact we're connected. And every opportunity we can find to connect with each other. And if we can't connect on this issue, maybe we can connect over here. And sometimes the over here is the art, is listening to this incredible, mandolin player that just blows our mind because we don't understand how those fingers move that fast and make that amazing music. And yet there's somebody standing next to us who appreciates that too. But with many other things, we are divided. Those moments of connection are the power. And so that's what I have to say that I really did appreciate and do appreciate about the Governor's Award and the arts, and because it's a recognition for community building. And whether I'm working as I have for an arts advisor, traveling the state, because I was very lucky to have to travel the state. I always had simultaneous my artistic career and a business career as an artist. And so my work as an arts consultant was traveling, the majority of the state of Ohio, working in well over 60 counties, and traveled all 88, I'm sure, over the years of working, and especially from my heart, working in minority communities, working in the African American, Appalachian, Native American, and Latino communities, Latinx communities in the state of Ohio, and in some Asian communities. That's really where work was, and that's where my heart was. And whenever I could find ways to be able to bridge gaps and connect people,
Mm-hmm.
to me, that was the most amazing reward for me personally. So having this award be about community building, that's the thing I appreciate the most.
I love it. Well, Michael London, this was your life as a conversation, but I absolutely am inspired by this conversation, and I'm so grateful for this connection that we have with dance and art. I mean, okay, my mind's a little blown. I'll definitely leave this conversation to ponder it. But thank you for. I mean, I can't even thank you enough for taking time out to record this conversation. I
You're
love it.
very welcome.
Rodney Veal's Inspired By is a production of Public Media Connect, the regional partnership of CET in Cincinnati and Think TV in Dayton. There's a lot of great art happening around Southwest Ohio, and we're excited to be part of it. If you like this episode, please subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can learn more and find the show notes at thinktv.org/inspired by or cetconnect.org/inspired by. Thank you.